for those of you migrating over from Adobe Photoshop, you may be asking the question of, well, what about layers? In Photoshop, you're constantly in your layers palette and constantly dealing with layers and doing layer blend modes and other such things. That Illustrator is a little bit different. I don't use the layer palette a lot. I usually would do things on it'll create layers for you, and I don't know, I just don't do a lot of it. The only reason why I would see it would come in handy is if you were doing some either one a website and you were doing different versions of a website, or you were doing different pages and you wanted to have the nav bar be one layer, and then you could hide and show other layers that would show the page contents from page to page. But for the most part, I don't really use it. But let's take a look at it. Let me create some objects here. I'm going to create this. We're going to come over here. I'm going to grab the square. And let's get me a circle too. So, we have each of these objects. And let's start playing around with our layers palette. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this square and this circle, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group those together. Remember, that's Command G. So these are now grouped together. When I select them, they are selected together because I wanted to show you how we mentioned in the grouping tutorial how you can rename a group. So I'll show that to you here. Let's go over to our layers palette. Okay, let me go ahead and expand this. Now the layers palette, I forgot to mention this, is over on the right hand side. And it looks like two pieces of paper being stacked on top of one another. You can also access this by going up to your window and then clicking on the layers palette here if you cannot find it, or there's a quick key function of F7. Don't use that very often, but as you can see, here is our layers palette. I am currently on one single layer. I have not created new layers. If I hide this, everything's going to be hidden all at once. So let me go ahead and let me create a new layer. It's just like in Photoshop. Down here at the bottom, it looks like a page is being turned. Create new layer. I can name this layer. I just double clicked on it, and this is just gonna be tutorial layer. You can give it a color, you can show it, you can lock it, you can preview it. I wouldn't mess with a lot of those settings there. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I now have a new layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and take those shapes that I just created here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shift click them to select multiples. If you hold shift down, it'll select a whole line. If you hold command down, just like when you're in a file manager, you can select randomly. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select these two together, and I'm going to drag them up into our tutorial layer. Now, this is now independent from the other layer. I can hide the previous layer, or I can hide my shapes. This eyeball here allows you to toggle visibility, so you can turn them on and off. This triangle arrow here allows you to expand or collapse a particular layer. You can see my layer 1 is packed with tons of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and hide that because I don't want you guys to see how disorganized I am, because I'm usually crazy OCD about naming my layers and everything. But in Illustrator, the environment I don't find it extremely helpful. But as you come into here, you can begin to rename things. If I double click on this octagon here, I can rename this octagon. Octagon. Let's go ahead and click OK. It's now named Octagon. Here's that group. If I have this triangle just within the group too. If I expand that, I can see the two shapes within the group. So now I can come in here and I can rename this circle. Double click on it, name this square. Double click on the group, and now I'm renaming the group. Shapes for tutorial. So I have all those shapes now. Now I can hide the whole entire group, or I can hide individual items within that group. I also, how we talked about locking layers, you can do that within the layers palette too. The next column over from the eyeball is the ability to lock things on and off. So now if I lock the circle and I come over and I try to select it, it's locked. I can't select it anymore. I can move items. So now I can move the octagon so that it's on top. I could drag the octagon inside the group, so now that they're all grouped together. I could pull the circle out, and now the circle is independent from the octagon and the square. Let me show you that by hiding the group. So you can have a lot of functionality within here. It can be quite helpful, like I said, if you're doing multiple versions of a particular design and you want to hide and show one version from another. Or when you're doing a website, you want to show different pages, but you want the nav bar and the basic design of the website to stay around the outside. And you just want the content to toggle in and out. That can be helpful. Also, you can target particular objects by clicking on them on the circle just to the right of them. By clicking on that, I've now selected my circle. If I click on right next to the object, the circle, it'll select the object, or the group. If I click on the circle on the octagon, it'll select the octagon. And you can see that it's now traced in red, which indicates that I'm on layer 2, because that's the color that I indicated to Illustrator that I wanted layer 2. Layer 1, for example, if I click on layer 1 here on the click to target or to select that particular layer, if I click on that, you can see everything's outlined in blue. So that can help you know that you're on the right layer, or if a particular object is in the correct layer. So that shows you a little bit of how to rename layers, move things around. This allows you to bypass the arrange function that we did earlier in an earlier tutorial of how to arrange things from front to back to bottom. So you can do it straight from here just by dragging and dropping objects. So play around with it. Like I said, I don't use it an awful lot, but it's something I'm glad I know, because if I ever do need it, it will make life a ton easier.